Hello, and welcome to the Family Histories Podcast, the show for those of us sat quietly in libraries, archives, and spare rooms all around the world, tirelessly piecing together our collective social and family history. My name is Andrew Martin, I'm a family historian, and I'll be your host. In this episode, The Judge will be hearing about a man whose career in law saw him face off against a notorious crook in American politics. And then we're looking for clues to a woman's father in 18th century Connecticut. So, put down that old apprenticeship record, grab a cuppa, and let's meet our guest. My guest today is, of course, family history obsessed, and quite frankly, he has good reason to be, given the fascinating figures of American history that lurk in his tree. One of these he's describing as, and I quote, a true American hero that saved New York City. So before I have to give a big apology, keeping him waiting, see what I did there, I think I should welcome my guest, John Mathues. Hello, John. Welcome to the Family Histories Podcast.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much. I'm just delighted to be here with you.
I'm really excited to have you here. It's great. Now, as is customary with this show, we always start with the same first question, which is, how did you end up becoming interested in family history?
That really, for me, it stems back to a fateful Easter get-together coming out of the COVID period. I believe it was Easter of 2021. I went down to my aunt and uncle's, and this was my father's brother, and I had known going all through my younger years and high school years that side of the family has been doing our genealogy, but it just was not something that I was really into, or they talked about it a little bit. But for whatever reason, that visit, they brought out the ancestry tree. They brought out the laptop. And basically, I guess it was just, you know what, we're going to show him. And you know what, this time, Andrew, it really clicked.
Okay.
They started to go back and mention some historical figures across different things. And just, it ended up really a lot of different connections to many lines across New England, out here. I live in Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania. There's some connections out here, and of course, a lot of connections to New York City, and some connections to Philadelphia, and a lot of connections to historical families, and those types of things that really drew me in.
I bet. So your family were quite enthusiastic family historians already. What was their attitude towards you kind of picking that up and running with it?
Well, I think maybe I took it, and I think I've exceeded what they were possibly thinking.
Okay.
The way I look at it is they had kind of scratched the surface, but I was the one that kind of took the baton, or if you want to say shovel, and dug really deep into it. It was just something. Once I started to get into it, it just really, I couldn't stop. I was just hooked once I started to search. I was very lucky to find some really big cases, big people, some people that were really well known, not too far back in the family tree. So the volume of what I could find kind of made it interesting, but it kind of can also be helpful because you can find so much when there is a bit of notoriety or things along those lines.
Definitely. And I think I first became aware of your research from seeing your posts probably on Blue Sky, and I was equally fascinated by what you were sharing, but also really envious by what you were sharing, because there looks like there's some wonderful family-related artifacts that you have discovered. So what sort of records did you start your research journey with?
To be honest, I really think I just started what we pretty much mostly, probably everybody does, is go to Google. Mm-hmm. And like I said, with someone being so prominent, there was a lot. I remember early on, I did sign up for a full, at least digital subscription to the New York Times, because I really needed that. Okay. So yeah, newspaper searches, Google, and a lot of it was just kind of getting busy through email, reaching out to the New York Genealogical and Biography Society, reaching out to New York Museum, reaching out to different groups in Philadelphia, wherever my ancestors, the different particular lines and ancestors, but reaching out to those sources, reaching out to Library of Congress, different presidential libraries, all kinds of, just kind of started there, seeing where the hits are. And, if they happen to be a hit on a website to a museum, a society, an organization, trying to find contact information. And just, like I said, I'm kind of just persistent and I like to dig.
But you definitely do. I mean, my family, there's no, I'm going to say this because this is what I think. There are no famous people, and I don't think there's any particular notorious people. There's some rioters, but I don't think there's any massively notorious people in there. So did you always know that they were lurking in your family history, or were a lot of these surprises to you?
Well, I fairly think, I think back a little bit about that, and I do remember as a child, my dad mentioning, I remember the phrase Supreme Court, but, it didn't click at that time, I'm only a child of 7, 8 years old. That just doesn't. Yeah. But, when I found out all this in 2021, I was 41 years old. So for me, I felt basically like I was completely unaware of any of this for the first 41 years of my life. For the most, like I said, there were inklings. Like I said, there was little mentions of it when I was younger, but that youthful mind, it didn't really register. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you share your findings with your family? Because obviously these are quite impressive findings that you've made.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, is through email and on social media, on Facebook at times. And I've been so lucky to actually purchase some historical documents and things through eBay and other sources. So I will take those in face-to-face meetings. So that's been fun too. There's another ancestor where I was actually able to purchase like campaign ribbons and those type of things. And I was able to give those because I actually bought like a lot, and I got like 5 or 6 pieces of political ephemera from the early 20th century. And so I actually gifted that to them as well, as a thank you. They're the ones that kind of got the whole thing started for me.
So if you could describe your family history, what would that be in like just a few words?
Oh, boy. This is kind of jokingly, but I'm not sure if you're a fan of Warren Zevon. Do you know the singer from the 70s and 80s?
No.
He had a song that was called Lawyers, Guns, and Money.
I don't know it.
And I've always said, because I have a lot of politicians and lawyers, I found out, like, I had an ancestor that was a gunsmith during the Revolutionary War, and he actually secured a contract with the U.S. Army to create guns for the United States Army during the Revolution. So that famous gunsmith is in my tree. And obviously, with the politicians, there was a lot of wealthy ancestors as well. So I kind of joked about that because it's a pretty famous song, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. But I think it pretty much sums up, a good part of my tree.
Well, we'll perhaps put a link to that song in the episode description.
Yeah.
So everyone can have a listen to it and get a better idea as to who they're listening to.
Yeah.
What's your favourite part of researching family history then?
Ah, boy. Well, I really think for me it is intertwined with American history. I've really become not only a fan of family history, but history in general. Mm-hmm. And out of that, I've really, like I said, I collect family political ephemera, but really just historical preservation in general. I've joined local groups, and really it's become a passion of mine, besides, doing family history research, but just preserving history and just becoming a student of history in general. I really think for me, it's been the key take that I've gotten out of it.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time then to give yourself just one research hint, what would it be?
When we were doing our introductions, Andrew, and my last name. And for me, it's the burning question of how my surname got its spelling.
Yeah.
It's something I have not been able to crack yet. And that is the key hint. How did the spelling of my last name become the way it is?
For listeners, before I hit recording, I did ask John how to pronounce his last name because it's spelled Mathues, and I thought it was Matthews, but I've never encountered a spelling like that before. Where do you think it perhaps comes from? Do you think that there's like a geographical or what's your hunch?
Honestly, my hunch, and I do want to preface that I'm fairly novice to the whole world of genealogy and family history. I've only been doing this a couple years, and I've read things, and I certainly don't present myself as an expert, but I'm passionate, but not quite yet an expert. But my personal feeling, and like I said, I would maybe need someone more of an expert in the field to say if my thoughts are right or wrong here. But in looking at some of the records that I've tried to go back along that line, in the handwriting of that time, 1790, 1800, 1810, the records that I've been kind of able to source, it's mixed up. I see TTHEWS, I see THEWS,
okay.
And I really don't see exactly where. Sometimes is that EWS or is that UES? Yeah, so that is my true personal feeling, is it may be from the handwriting and just a misinterpretation of the handwriting there.
Yeah, and it just stuck and has travelled through time and it's reached you. So it's quite nice for a misspelling, perhaps, of a name.
Yeah.
Where do you think or hope the family history industry might go next? We've seen a lot of things with kind of AI and DNA testing as well. Where do you think it might go next?
Oh, that is a great question. Honestly, I think that's going to keep growing. But, my personal take is I actually enjoy when I can have in-person collaboration, and so my hope is that the push for that, the automation, the AI, I really hope that the field and the hobby doesn't lose that personal touch, because I have joined some local groups, and just that in-person collaboration, I just personally feel that it's so helpful, and I just enjoy it so much, that I hope that opportunities for that doesn't go away.
Yeah. And do those groups that you've joined, do they have kind of online stuff as well? Are they kind of a mixture of the things that they do, or?
Well, we're kind of a subcommittee of the board of a local museum that my ancestors actually once owned, the building, the house that is now a museum.
Okay.
So we'll do Zoom meetings at times, but yeah, a lot of it is just doing in-person research, and it's meetings about strategy and those things too, but in presenting research and but right now we're building our trees and everything online, correct? Yeah.
So final question, what does genealogy mean to you?
For me, it's passion. It's I don't for me it's probably my number one hobby, joy. It's it's really, it's the way I like to enjoy, when I do get some free time, it's what I like to spend it on.
Yeah, you are not alone in that for sure. Ooh, time for a little advert break. One day, someone in your family will want to know who you were. Not just your name, but your voice, your story, your memories. And that's why Ancestor exists. It's a private, secure place to preserve the things that don't belong in a family tree. The stories behind the photos, the voices, the moments that explain who someone really was. Nothing is public, nothing is social, just something built to last for the people who come after you. If that matters to you, you can begin for free at anceststory.com. That's ANCESTORII.com. I love a good story, or, well, even a bad one, but there are a lot more interesting when you go and discover them for yourselves within the branches of your own family tree. Yes, it's time for my guests to pick one of their most fascinating relatives that they've researched and then share their life story. Right, John, who are you going to introduce us to?
I would like to introduce to you my third great-grandfather. His name is Judge Noah Davis.
Ah, okay. And where does Noah's story begin?
Noah's story begins in Haverhill, New Hampshire, where he was born on September 10th, 1818.
Was he a child of kind of a large family?
Yes, I know he had several siblings. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many, but there were several Davis children.
Great. So what's Noah's early life like?
Well, like I said, he was born in New Hampshire, but by the time he was 7, his parents had moved from New Hampshire to Albion, New York, which is about a half hour, 45 minutes east of Niagara Falls. And that's where the Davis family settled down in Albion, New York.
Okay, so we're talking perhaps kind of, 18...
That was 1825 when they moved to Albion, New York.
So what's life like for them there in this new place in Albion?
Well, from my research, I had read that the Davis family, they were not of that many means. And it is even stated that Noah at times would walk barefoot to school there in the late 1820s.
Right.
But he was always very ambitious. And he decided that he wanted to study law, and he began copying deeds in the evening for a more famous or well-to-do lawyer of that time in the town, Sanford E. Church. Sanford E. Church would later on become Chief Justice of the Appeals Court in New York. And actually, I believe he was Lieutenant Governor as well.
He was a big deal and probably someone quite useful to work with then.
Yeah, and he was also Noah's largest mentor.
So Noah's obviously absorbing all of this information that he's getting in his work. So I guess that's kind of helping him to progress in his own career.
Yep, that's correct. And he ended up going to, he studied law in Lewiston, New York. And he was admitted to the bar in 1841. And his first early practices were in Gainesville and Buffalo. But then in 1844, he returns to Albion, and he actually establishes an office with his mentor, Church and Davis, which becomes basically the most successful practice in that town.
And what sort of cases were they working on?
I found some anecdotes and I think it was just general practice. I think they pretty much handled a pretty wide range of cases.
So where does Noah kind of move on from this kind of successful practice?
Well, it was at that point in 1858, he was elected to the New York Supreme Court in the Western District, the district that oversees Buffalo, Niagara, Albion. So he ascends to the New York Supreme Court in 1858 at the age of, 41? So he was pretty young when he first was selected to the New York Supreme Court.
Well, that must have been quite something, because I would imagine that quite a lot of other people there would have been much, much older than him.
Yes.
So what was his career like amongst those kind of people?
I really think from what I've read, he had a great mentor, but I don't want to say he outpaced, but, basically he could hang with this really great, very respected lawyer and maybe even ascend. I don't want to say above, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like he was just so young, but so good that, they knew he was going places.
So what kind of places does he end up going to from there?
Well, in 1867, he actually enters the race for the New York Senate seat. His opponents were Roscoe Conklin and Horace Greeley. It was a 3-way race, and unfortunately, Noah lost by 1 vote.
Oh.
So he was almost a U.S. Senator.
Yeah, I'm surprised given his legal background. He might not have said, let's investigate this, let's recount.
Yeah, but he didn't have to wait too long.
Okay.
Because in 1868, he is elected to the 41st Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives.
So he makes it.
So he does become a congressman. He just had to wait a year. So instead of the Senate, he was in the U.S. House.
Okay.
And that was a critical period for him because it was during that time that he befriends Ulysses S. Grant.
Ah, okay. Which is quite a good contact to have.
Yes. And they became very close. And I have newspaper articles with Noah spending many long hours in the Oval Office about many different issues during that time period, 1869, early 1870. So there's an opening in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. And President Ulysses S. Grant nominates Noah Davis to become the next U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. And so Noah resigns from the House of Representatives to accept that position. And that really leads to the biggest moment in Noah's life. But for me, looking as, from the historic eye, it really shows me President Grant befriended Noah, and he knew this was the man to take down Tweed.
So for someone who is an ignorant Brit, can you help me understand perhaps better who Boss Tweed is in American history?
Certainly. Well, he was a man that rose through the ranks, and that's, I don't want to step back, but it's actually kind of amazing. Both of these men kind of quickly rose through ranks on opposite sides. And so Noah had his quick rise, but for most people, Boss Tweed is the one that's more well known today.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of times the notorious side kind of gets that. But the short of it is Boss Tweed rose through the ranks of New York politics. He ends up on New York City Council. He ends up basically robbing the city in, I believe it was in 1860s, 1870 real dollars of 250 million, which would be in today's numbers, I've heard up to billions of dollars through different various schemes, graft corruption schemes. It wasn't just money, it was control as well. Illegal contracts, you name it.
Oh, wow.
And it really was the strong-armed grip over the entire city. Threats of fear, almost that mafiosa type of strong-armed government.
Yeah.
It really is the face of corruption in the United States. To this day, we're still talking about it 150 years later. And Tweedism, in some ways, the world will always be fighting that. But it really had reached a really horrible, and, it couldn't keep going on the way it was going there in the late 1860s, early 1870s with Tweed and what he was doing in New York City.
And for Noah to bring him down, that must be quite an achievement, because he sounds like that Boss Tweed is quite a fearsome, powerful character, but also as a politician, probably as slippery as an eel as well to actually catch.
Oh, exactly. That was the talk of that time, is that no one was ever going to touch Tweed. He was too powerful. There was so many other judges he bought off that would end up getting also, convicted, disbarred, because he was offering them enormous amounts of money for that time period. And there were several judges that took the bribes and ended up getting disbarred, and that went down too.
Do you know if he ever tried to bribe Noah at all?
That is a great question, and that I have never come across that. From what I've read, though, I don't think he did. I think he just knew.
He just knew that he ought to steer clear of Judge Noah Davis.
Yeah.
So how did this progress then?
A man like Tweed was not going to be taken down by one man. So really there were a couple things that really helped. Some very brave men and organizations. One was the political cartoonist Thomas Nast, in conjunction with the New York Times. They really ended up helping getting the public pressure to sway and turn, which then started to put internal forces on the municipal government to start looking into the case. And really, why I said that, I'm always, trying to research this, but It was only more recently that it clicked to me that with Noah becoming the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, he kind of got the proceedings going in that case in conjunction with the municipal government and getting that all together.
So it really was quite a group of them.
There was a committee of 70 that was developed, and that was influential New Yorkers, it was politicians. So, it was industrialists, it was capitalists, and government. It was just all the important forces in New York City that got together, and they laid this out. And it was also coming up that the term of the New York Supreme Court was coming up. And that's when that Noah was chosen by this committee of 70 then to be put up for the Supreme Court. And that's when he was successfully elected Earlier in his life, he was in the 8th District. Now he was elected to the 1st District. So he was the head of the Supreme Court in the 1st District, which is Manhattan, for which the U.S. Attorney's Office is based in Manhattan. So it was all lined up that Noah would preside over the trial of Boss Tweed.
And how long did the trial go on for? Because it must have gone on for quite a while.
Yeah, well, there was a first trial in January of 1873. It did only last, I believe, 9-10 days.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that was a hung jury. So it was not the outcome they wanted the first time around.
Okay.
But they were able to get a second trial, and that began in November of 1873.
Uh-huh.
There's a bit of even to this day, I've seen articles that have mentioned this. So Tweed's counsel really went all out on a limb here. And he had, I believe it was like 6 or 7 attorneys, of course, the best that money could buy.
Bet he did. Yep.
But one of those young lawyers was a man by the name of Elihu Root. And Elihu Root ends up becoming quite a famous U.S. historical figure in his own right. I believe he was Secretary of State under Roosevelt many years later, but in his early career, he actually acted as defense for Boss Tweed. So anyway, Tweed's counsel approaches Noah before the trial begins, and they hand him a note that they believe he is biased, and they ask him to recuse himself from presiding over the trial. And he did not take that kindly. He held them in contempt. He fined them. And to this day, that it's still talked about in legal circles, and it was just a very historical moment that they actually, I don't know what they were thinking, because it certainly didn't help Tweed's case to really get the judge that irate just before the proceedings start.
No, that's not a good plan. So with Tweed convicted, what happens to kind of Noah at this point?
This saga, it never ends, Andrew. It really is something. So Tweed's convicted on November 19th, 1873, and Noah sentences him to 12 years prison, and he's fined $12,750.
Peanuts.
Yes. But unfortunately, though, that 12-year sentence ends up getting appealed to higher courts who rules it down. And so it actually gets reduced to 1 year. However, Governor of New York and Noah, they act quickly. So this is on criminal charges. However, at that time, there was criminal and then there was civil. And so they turn around and they go after Tweed for $3 million in civil penalties so they can still jail him. And basically, he really only had to serve 1 year for the criminal charges. However, the way that the civil and the debtors' prisons worked is that you were jailed until you could pay it off. But basically, he was in jail till he could pay that off, which he could never do. So they found a way around the upper courts appealing down the original conviction. And he ended up escaping from jail in 1875.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so much intrigue to this story. It's really wild. But anyway, he ends up coming back and he ends up getting sick in 1877 and dying in prison. So justice was served. But as for Noah, I had read articles where obviously he was the toast of New York City. I don't know if he ever ran for mayor and governor, but I had read that his name was put out there for both of those offices. But he remained on the New York Supreme Court. They did promote him to Chief Justice. So he was the chief for the rest of his career. Then 1874 to 1886, he was Chief Justice of the New York Supreme Court. He still had many other famous trials and other many very famous and important moments on the New York Supreme Court past Tweed. Basically, he was living his life as he was still very strong and interested in national politics with the Republican Party. He weighed in on a very important case in the 1880 election. He helped President Garfield get elected. Yeah.
Am I remembering correctly that there's also something to do with the Statue of Liberty in here as well?
Well, he was on the committee to get the statue brought to New York. You know, he had dinners with the sculptor And, he had led a lot of that charge, and he was on the short list of the committee that brought the statue to New York. Yeah, because, that's the time he was living in. Yeah, that's what I think about, that what he was doing at that time was, he literally was there at all those things when all those things were happening. And, he was right there right by the side of the mayor, right by side of any big event happening in New York City in the 1870s, 80s, 90s.
Amazing. Because
of what he did. He, of course, was considered right there with all the biggest people in the biggest city in the world.
Which leaves a fantastic paper trail
Sure.
for you
Yes.
to find and piece this extraordinary life together.
Yes.
Right at the beginning, you said that he was your 3 times great-grandfather.
That's correct.
So somewhere within this impressive career, he's also been a dad at least once. So what was his own family like?
You know what, Andrew? It's really sad. So he had 4 daughters, and I can say 2 of them died in their teenage years. One lived, I believe, to 15, and one was like 17. So they didn't even live to see what happened there. They had died before he ever reached Manhattan.
Okay.
So a 3rd daughter, that's my 2nd great aunt, died in childbirth in 1871. So he had lost 3 daughters before the Tweed case ever occurred.
Okay.
And it's actually, I think about in the time and the way that he had lost 2 children before my 2nd great-grandmother was actually his last daughter. Ellen Mary Nellie, they called her Nellie Davis. She was born in 1865, but 2 of her older sisters had already passed by the time she was born. So she was born, she had a sister, Louisa, but that's the sister that was, so Nellie was only 6 years old when her sister Louisa has passed away. So by the time of the Tweed trial, my great-great-grandmother is the only living daughter of Judge Davis, and then his wife, my 3rd great-grandmother, Ellen Mather Davis. There was a lot of tragedy there, and my line is surviving, but even Nellie is a case of tragedy, as she died before Noah. She died in 1899. She was only 33 years old. So all 4 of his daughters died way all before their times.
Yeah, that is sad.
And it's actually because of that, my great-grandmother actually lived with Noah. And my dad actually has told me stories that, and that's what brings the personal touch for me.
Yeah.
So my dad remembers his grandmother telling him stories of living with Noah Davis and just what a smart, intelligent man he was. And that's the side that makes it personal for me. And that's, for me, is like, my dad knows a woman that knew and loved this man. Yes, he lived so long ago, but that's the personal touch for me that I just think is amazing when I read about all these things that he did in his life. But that's the side that actually brings the human touch to it.
That is a fantastic story, and it's amazing to have that connection to such a key figure in that part of American history. Thank you, John, for sharing the story of Noah Davis, but I think it's now time for you to face
the brick wall.
Ever get that feeling of brick on forehead? I do. Sometimes, though, all it takes is a little clue or research idea from someone else that just helps to make that brick wall come tumbling down. This is where you come in, as it's that part of the show where my guest shares one of their brick walls in a hope that you, dear listener, can help them make a breakthrough. So, John, how can we help?
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I really kind of came across this because in some of my early research, it was showing a line up to the Mayflower. And of course, I wanted to jump in and say, yeah, that's right. I'm a Mayflower. Besides the point, I am on another line. But anyway,
okay.
I keep going back to this. And this line is tangential, actually, to Judge Noah Davis. It's actually through his wife.
Right.
So there is a connection there. So Judge Noah's wife was Ellen Mather. Her father was James Mather, so that's my 4th great-grandfather.
Okay.
His dad was, I always liked this name, Phineas Mather. And then Phineas was married to a woman, Huldah Taylor. So Taylor's her maiden name. And Huldah's story is really a trouble for me.
Okay.
Now, the early Mathers, before they made it to Western New York, were in Suffield, Connecticut. So I know Huldah and Phineas got together in Suffield, Connecticut. However, this is the town where I have this problem. So I have lots of long, great records about the Mather family in Suffield. That's the male side is fine. Huldah is really my brick wall.
Okay.
Some of, like I said, there were some earlier trees, that they had some erroneous research that tied Huldah to like the Delano family. That's the Franklin Delano Roosevelt, like the Delano family, and which then takes you back to several of the Mayflower families. And the more I was digging into it, it just didn't seem right. And I have a father for Huldah is Gad Taylor, but I just cannot find any marriage records. And even Gad Taylor's, I'm finding some that are too young to be Huldah's. Well, and that was the other key where I didn't think these other lines were right, because they had a different, I think they had Samuel Taylor.
Right, yep.
But my fourth grade father, James, had a brother, Gad. This name Gad kept coming up. And then even different lines, I saw that name kept repeating. So I knew that was most likely was a name that came down. So then I found this Gad Taylor in Suffolk, and he would be the right age, but I just can't find much about him. I have some very brief details about him. I can't find a wife. It's just one of those that, some of them just stick with you.
Yes.
And I think because early on it was a line that I got all excited about a Mayflower connection. And then as I got a little more seasoned with doing this research, I was like, you can't just take the path that you want, or, you have to find the right answer, and that's just where I'm kind of at right now.
So there's some interesting names there that are not familiar to me. So obviously Gad and also Huldah.
Yeah.
I'm actually familiar with Phineas. I think I've got one of those in my tree somewhere. But Gad and Huldah are very unusual to me. So how are we spelling those?
Well, that's G-A-D.
Okay.
And then Huldah is Huldah.
Okay, and the Taylor here, would that be the Taylor or Tailor?
Taylor.
And what sort of dates do you think Huldah is born?
I have really good records of her. 1758 to 1847. I should say later life records of her.
And do you have any kind of idea for this Gad? Because you've said that there's actually conflicting records that it is Gad or not.
The record I have here is that he was born in 1721. With her being born in 1758, that seems plausible.
Yeah.
I don't have a death record for him. Like I said, this is it starts to get, the mortars appearing around Gad.
Yes, yeah.
That's where the mortar starts to really appear.
So where do you kind of suspect this Huldah and Gad family are from?
Yeah, I don't, like you said, that name Huldah, I really don't know the origin. They are really interesting names, but one more of the reasons why I'd like to, continue this line on. There's just something about this that and maybe it's the challenge. This has really always fascinated me, and I've actually thought about going up to that, but someday I think I would like to go up to this area. I don't believe it's that big of a town, Suffield. I think it's still a fairly small town, so I'm thinking maybe some in-person research, but that's the problem when you go back to this age. Sometimes that's why we do what we do, but it is difficult when you get back to that era. But I do really enjoy when I can doing in-person research to especially these areas that I've never really been to this area of the country. So
Okay, so my fingers crossed that we can find some origins for Huldah and also for Gad, and also perhaps help John confirm that it's Gad as well. What's the best way for listeners to make contact if they think that they have a clue or a research idea?
Yeah, I think Blue Sky at jkmfamilyhistory.bksky.social.
Excellent. Of course, listeners can head over to familyhistoriespodcast.com where they can read this episode's show notes and send us a message, or they can just email us at hello@familyhistoriespodcast.com and we'll pass the message along. Now, as the listeners get stuck into some ideas of where to research, it's just possible that I might be able to help you with this, but you'll need to follow me through to the garage.
Okay.
Here we are.
Well, where are we exactly?
This is my secret time machine, a highly technical, fully functional piece of scientific equipment.
A secret time machine? It looks more like a Jara's paradise.
Is that some kind of Trek Wars reference?
Well, not really, but...
Good, as this isn't some silly sci-fi make-believe thing. This is hardcore physics and everything.
Does it work?
It definitely does. In fact, I recently spent a weekend learning to embroider myself into the Bayeux tapestry. It had a few things in it, of course, but apparently a podcast QR code is inappropriate, Andrew. But anyway, I thought you might like to take a trip back in time. You know, see if you can solve that brick wall of yours as it happens.
You can really do that? That would be amazing.
Yep, as long as you don't go changing your own history. But if you grab a seat over there, then I'll get this all set up. Right. When and where would you like to go to?
I'd like to go back to Suffield, Connecticut in 1721.
Okay, Connecticut, yep. I can actually put you in on the 5th of May. There's an opening. It's not even raining. You'll need to take this with you, though.
What's that?
This is your temporal beacon. Keep it with you at all times, and then when you want to come back, just press the button on the top, and you'll be back here before you even know it.
Awesome, let's go.
Go indeed, because here's your stop. John Mathues, thank you, goodbye, and good luck. 1721, yep. Suffield Point? Antarctica? Whoops. The Family Histories podcast was presented and produced by me, Andrew Martin, and my guest was the brilliant John Mathues. If you've enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to click like or follow to get the next one for free as soon as it's available. Thank you for listening. Approximately no family historians were harmed in the making of this podcast.